Now this would probably be our last or second last part of this little series on sampling in dance music, or sampling in EDM, and that is the fair use law. So the fair use law applies to all things copyright. In a brief example, the ability to use this music in my lessons is for education, right? So I am protected under fair use to use this copyright material to make a commentary or to teach with, right? So that is, fair use in a nutshell. Fair use applies to a lot of things in terms of reference, commentary, parody, and whatnot. So there's 4 parts to the fair use thing that they look at, and it's very vague, and it's very vague on purpose. The first part, number 1, takes into account the purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is of non-profit or informational purposes. So obviously sampling in music is almost always commercial, so they take that into account. That doesn't mean you're automatically guilty. That doesn't mean a lawyer with a piece of paper on his wall can, ream your butt. That is not, doesn't make you automatically guilty if it's commercial or not, right? Yeah, basically. And if non-profit, if you release a remix for free, nothing can happen. And you're still protected under fair use. And in my opinion, it doesn't matter if it's commercial or non-commercial. Second part deals with the nature of the copyright work. All right, so the nature, say if you sample a hook or a substantial part. No, I'm jumping ahead. If you're interpolating or putting it in a different context, a different genre, then the nature is okay. So if you're taking music, if you're taking audio from one track and then putting it into your own, that's the nature of it. Also, say if you quote a book, that's the nature. If that makes any sense. That's an area I'm not too familiar with, but they look at the nature of as a whole of what you're doing here. And number 3, and this is exceptionally important, the amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyright work as a whole. Okay, this is the first part. So the portion of it, if you sample a clap or a kick, what they did in the 90s, they would basically sample each other's kicks, right? Say, you can do something called the microsample, and I go over this in another one of my videos. You can use a microsample. It's a very, very minute part. The amount, so the amount, there's no hard rule about the amount. It could be half a bar or a full bar. It could be, this little snippet right here, like in the previous video. It could be that part used in a part of it as a building block. It's not the lead. It doesn't contain, a vocal. It's a guitar part, right? And and the part where it says the portion in relation to the copyright work as a whole. So if you sample an entire track, say if you sample, I don't know, the new Aoki track, and you put your own kick onto it, and then you try to pass it off, that's not gonna fly, bro. That's not gonna fly. But if you, I guess, sample a little tiny part, or if you take a reverb tail and then you process it in a neat way, and then duck it, and then filter it, that's fine. And that's how a lot of samples are created. The last part, and this is important, and this is your main ammunition, the effect of the use upon the potential market for the value of the copyright work. So that basically means, will that affect the original artist? Does it affect the original artist? So say Justice samples Rage Against the Machine, or Daft Punk samples Eddie Johns. So the effect on the market, it largely depends on the era. So this came out, I would assume, in the 70s, right? And the market, it's done, the vinyl's been pressed, it's on compilation, stuff like that, but it's not affecting the potential market because this is not going back in time. That's the first part, right? And you know, I have an imaginary piece of paper on my wall too, so I'm a lawyer now. I'm playing lawyer. So so the effect there can only be an effect on the market if it replaces the track, right? So if you know, you sample an entire thing and you add your own kick to it, it could potentially replace the original track on the market, and then they could get mad at you. But if they sound indistinguishable as a whole, right? This that right there, it sounds nothing like, and it's a completely different market, and it does not impede on the sales of the original. You know, I'd rather buy One More Time than that, but that doesn't matter. And that is probably the main ammunition from the views of a lawyer. If you're a lawyer, they say, you know, anything, any sample size, it could be a vocal chirp, it could be like a piano key or something. In the eyes of a lawyer, you know, we're infringing on their copyright. You know, they own every single duty cycle of the waveform. You know, in the eyes of a lawyer, they own everything. But you know, I'll show you an example, right? So right now I'm gonna take something, and we're gonna do something I call microsampling. I'm sure it's called something else, right? I'm gonna take this right here. Oh, I might want to unmute it. Right, and that could be kind of a bell sound. I can add a reverb tail to it, right? Or I could take that little tiny thing right there, right, and I could use that in a track, and you know, as an example, you know, I could take that, right, and you know, in the eyes of a lawyer, oh, I'm taking a lot of things. So what I'll do is I'll just go over here, I'll take even less, and I'll loop this, and I guess I'll make some sort of a bass line or a lead out of it. Or whatnot. Kind of a weird example, but some basses are made like this. Right? You know, that's taking, you know, a very, very, very minute, like less than 0.11% of the track, and putting it into a different context. You know, I'd obviously process this differently, add some filters and compress it a bit. But yeah, in the eyes of a lawyer, this is copyright infringement, but it just depends. So if you were a judge and they say, oh, they took this and we can somehow prove it, right? You know, would a judge, you know, say, yes, absolutely, this is copyright infringement. This is like 0.0001% of the track of a whole. This is copyright infringement. This should be stopped. You know, this is done. And the tools are here to allow us to do it. Right? You know, just some food for thought. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I just thought I would kind of talk about it for an hour. Any more examples? Yeah, I guess you're mainly dealing with the effect of the potential market. So take from other genres, take from a movie. That's another thing, sampling from movies. Completely, in my opinion, sampling like a one-line thing from a movie or a quote from a movie is just like quoting in a book. Quoting a poem in a book or whatnot. Breaking Bad, they read from a poem on the show. And I'm sure it's in the public domain, but whatever. It's another example. All right, I've talked enough. Hope you learned stuff. Let me know what you think. And if you're a lawyer and you say I'm wrong, then live in your own little world, because we're not stopping. All right, take care, guys.